Let's talk to Alan Mendoza, Dr. Alan Mendoza, who's Executive Director of the think tank, the Henry Jackson Society. Dr. Mendoza, so the second-in-command of the Wagner Group, we're led to believe, Dmitry Utkin, was also on that aircraft. If it is true that both men have been killed, what happens to Wagner now, do you think?
Well, that's a very good question, because Prigozhin himself, let alone his number two, was the figure who had created and forged and expanded Wagner to where it was today. Maybe his deputy could have taken it on, given he would have been privy to all his secrets and his methodologies. But it seems unclear who else within the mercenary outfit would be able to actually take it on. So it may well be that it either splits up into small battalions, as it were, different groupings that go and do their own thing, or just melts away into whatever main forces might absorb it.
Do you think there's... I know this is difficult to judge, but let me ask you the question anyway. Does the Wagner Group, in their criticism of the centre and the way the war in Ukraine is being prosecuted, have any body of support? Is it possible to measure whether ordinary Russians think they're right and Putin is wrong?
Well, that's obviously very difficult given the way that Russia was obviously censored. All we have to go on, though, was the sort of adulatory crowds who greeted Prigozhin when he actually took over Rostov. Remember, of course, without even, really firing a gun. And he was, people seemed genuinely happy. They seemed to approve of his presence. And if that was any guide, that sort of sentiment may well run, wider in Russia. And I think that's probably one of the things that shocked Putin in that coup, was not simply how quickly Prigozhin made progress, but I think the reaction of the Russian people who he came across, that too, I think, would have been a tremendous shock to the president.
It's very difficult to know, isn't it, whether there was a body of opinion that thought the whole thing was a bit of a stunt with Putin's blessing, just to sort of tease out things and test loyalties. Perhaps it wasn't, perhaps it was. On the world stage, of course, Mr. Putin now will be... his ambition is to look stronger, but he didn't go to the BRICS conference down in South Africa, to which he was invited. He just sent a video message instead. How do you think his world standing is affected by all this?
Well, you're right to point out he didn't go to the BRICS summit, despite there being considerable speculation that A, he would, and B, the South Africans wouldn't arrest him and all the rest of it. I don't think Putin feels safe enough to leave Russia right now. There was one coup attempt when he was in place. It's classic coup behavior to wait until the leader leaves the country and then re-emerge. And I would imagine that, with Prigozhin still around and others, potentially others sniffing about as well, he felt unable to leave. And I think, obviously, that may have hastened Prigozhin's demise, the fact he was roaming around Russia as well, with abandon. And it's quite interesting that Putin would have resorted to this. It's a big step, but it's obviously the way he felt he had to control the situation. But it's weakness that he allowed this to, kind of get to this stage where he had to take him out in a plane strike, as it were.
OK. Do you think on the balance of probability that is what's happened? I mean, we're being slightly cautious and reporting what we can and get confirmed. But on the balance of probabilities, that's exactly what has taken place?
Balance of probabilities would seem, given the safety record of the plane, I think there's been one accident in 20 years of that plane anywhere, which was human error rather than anything else. Given who was on it, and not just him, but people around him who might have taken over, and the fact that we haven't heard much to the contrary, although we do need final confirmation, I think the balance certainly suggests that this was an assassination.